Hey guys, it's Hollywood Studios here, and today we have an interesting video regarding some news coming out of Six Flags. I was planning on creating more of a State of Six Flags type video for the end of the year, but that's going to come after this because I really did want to cover this news because it's very interesting. For those of you who haven't seen, the Wall Street Journal recently published an article titled "Activist Urges Six Flags to Monetize Its Real Estate," and this is about a shareholder of Six Flags called Land and Buildings Investment Management LLC, and this company has a pretty interesting pitch for Six Flags as to how they can help reverse a decline in their share price, and this idea may not be great for Six Flags in terms of the perspective of the parks and of course of coaster enthusiasts. So obviously Six Flags has gone through a whirlwind of changes the past year. Salim Basoul took over as the CEO in November of 2021, ousting Mike Spanos, and over the year we've seen a lot of changes made to Six Flags. I'm going to go over all those changes and the future of Six Flags more in a later video, but obviously Six Flags is a very different company now than it was a year ago, and the stock price definitely reflects that. There's been lower attendance this year, and yes, they have been charging more, but share prices really haven't reflected a good year per se. The quarterly earnings calls have not been too great in terms of statistics for Six Flags. Six Flags, simply put, is underperforming compared to how they used to be, and there's been a lot of ideas, a lot of weird theories going around as to things that could be happening to the company, and this one is the first one I'm seeing that has some merit to it, and one that actually does have me kind of concerned. This company essentially has the idea of taking Six Flags, looking at the real estate potential with the land that Six Flags owns. Of course, Six Flags owns and operates almost 30 amusement, water park, theme parks, whatever you want to call them. They own and operate a lot of land and of course lots of amusement parks and water parks on that land. This company essentially wants these parks to have their land sold, which would make Six Flags a huge profit, and Six Flags would hopefully continue to operate the parks on this land, which would now be leased since they would be selling it. So essentially they would sell it to an outside buyer, and that buyer would allow them to operate the theme park on that property that they now own. Now, this is, in my opinion, a pretty bad move if it does go through, because not owning the theme park's land really does not put you in a good spot. We could see this with California's Great America. Obviously the correlation isn't direct, but Cedar Fair recently sold off California's Great America's land, and they're planning to completely close the park by 2024 from what I remember. So California's Great America is essentially on the chopping block as a result of something very similar to this. Of course, Six Flags does need to recoup their lost money in terms of shares. They need to get the share prices back up. But in my opinion, I don't think this is the best way to do that. I think the best way to go about that is to do it naturally by improving the parks and really making it clear that Six Flags is good, it's great, and that there's a reason to buy stocks and have a good hope for the future of Six Flags. I think that's a better approach in terms of bettering the company as opposed to doing it quick and, in my opinion, what kind of feels like a get-rich-quick kind of situation. I feel like this firm is kind of proposing the prospect of making money very quickly to the board, and I really hope they don't bite on this idea because, like I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I think it could lead to parks being closed, whether that be accidentally or on purpose. I do think at this point there are parks that may just be on the chopping block, not necessarily to be closed permanently, but maybe to be sold outside of the Six Flags chain, which I think would probably be a good idea. In my opinion, the Six Flags chain as it stands right now is just too big. I think they need to start downsizing a little bit and focus on certain parks, because right now what they're doing is they're focusing on their certain big parks that makes them money and that they really like, and the other parks are kind of just getting neglected. We see this with Fiesta Texas, of course, being like a favorite child. They keep getting edition after edition, and other parks like, say, Six Flags St. Louis, Six Flags America, they're really not getting anything, and they haven't gotten anything in a while. I think parks like that could definitely be on the chopping block in terms of being sold off. Of course, I don't hope for any of these parks to permanently close. An amusement park permanently closing is always a devastating situation for all parties involved. Of course, the fans are very devastated that their park, whether they've been going there for a year, for 50 years, however long, is permanently closing. We've seen that with Astro World, as well as Six Flags New Orleans, which was a bit of a different scenario, but many situations where it just doesn't end well. and I think that Six Flags should avoid doing that at all costs. Like I said, they should pursue a more natural course of improving the company as opposed to something like this. And from what I'm reading in the Wall Street Journal article, the firm's founder and chief investment officer, Jonathan Litt, has been in touch with Six Flags management, as well as Salim Basool, the CEO of Six Flags, with regard to splitting the business into separate operating and property companies, where this company's real estate could be sold to partners and leased back to Six Flags. So essentially the same thing I said, where they wouldn't actually own the land their park sits on. A different third party would own the land and lease the land to Six Flags to operate the theme park on, which, like I said, is a really disastrous, potentially disastrous situation where these third parties could wind up turning around and saying, well, we don't want your theme park on our land anymore now that we own it. Of course, I imagine they would have contracts to ensure that wouldn't happen, but it's always a potential possibility. We see that with California's Great America, where the park was pretty fine until the 49ers stadium started using the same parking lot as them, or at least started being in close proximity to the park. I'm not sure of the exact arrangement over there, but from what I understand, that was a major part of why California's Great America was sold off. So overall, I do think that there's potential for this to turn out bad, but at the same time, maybe they will see this, maybe see it as an opportunity. Again, I don't really see it as a positive. I think that they should keep ownership over all their land, and I think we should make sure that we keep an eye out on this company, watch to see what moves they make in terms of shareholder with Six Flags if they decide to buy up stock and become a much larger stake shareholder. Currently they're 3%, which is definitely not the biggest, but it's not the smallest either. There's plenty of shareholders out there, so 3% is a pretty decent stake in the company. Of course, as the shareholders become bigger and bigger, having larger stakes in the company, they will have much larger, much more significant decision-making power. And of course, the fact that Jonathan Litt, who is the chief investment officer of this firm, is in contact with Salim and the rest of Six Flags corporate, that could wind up meaning that he can talk them into this, let them see what he sees. Of course, maybe he does have a good vision. I'm trying to be as unopinionated as I can, but of course I do have my opinion, which is I think Six Flags should keep their land. Do not sell your land and lease the parks to operate on that land. It's just a recipe for disaster, at least potential disaster. There's just a lot of things that could go wrong, and it's best to avoid any of that going wrong. But that's just my take on this whole situation. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think on this matter. Of course, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos regarding Six Flags and other amusement and theme parks coming soon. Goodbye, guys.